Good morning, everyone. Yeah. Firstly, I would just like to understand from you. So, which stream, which batch you all are from, and is there anything common in you all, or what are you expecting from this? So, it's a please.
Good morning. My name is Muskan, and we are actually our batches of diverse backgrounds, like we are from finance, marketing, operations,
Okay.
and currently we are in our third trimester.
Okay.
Yeah, and from this session, I'm really excited to attend this session. We all are, and we are really excited to know about your journey, about Louis Stitch, and
Sure.
how the brand was built as it's a
Sure.
Made in India luxury brand. So we are
Sure.
really
Sure. Definitely. So, I believe most of you are versed with some of the marketing terms. Yeah. Perfect. Right. So, uh, today, what I am going to share with you, this is something very rare, right? You may not have, heard or maybe, may not have thought from this direction, right? But this is very interesting. This is going to be very interesting, right? So I have tried to, relate entrepreneurship, with some sort of the scientific measures or maybe some sort of a neuroscience also, right? So why an entrepreneur is called an entrepreneur and why some people become an entrepreneur and why some of them become successful entrepreneurs, right? So this is very critical, from a lens that we should understand. Do we have the capability of being an entrepreneur? Yes, we do have, right? But what we have to do, right? So apart from what we see from the usual people, right? So we know that somebody has started this startup. After 3 years, they've struggled, right? It may have closed, right? Some become super successful. Some become, serial entrepreneurs, right? So there is a difference. This is not something, it's a luck or it's something, but there is a difference, right? So let's try to understand this. So it was the cold evening of 3rd Jan 2020 when I started my venture. I was sitting behind my couch, right? This is from where I started my business, and I was packing a shoe in a box, right? And I was somehow, it was a very cold evening. I was sitting in my Bermudas, right? Because I was packing a shoe, right? And when I was doing so, I was traversing or I was somehow traveling into the time, right? I was thinking what I have done in the past, what my studies were. I have always been into finance, right? Doing fairly good in the studies throughout my career, right? And I was thinking, will that be something? Did I really opt for this? Will I be, polishing shoes and packing the shoes? Is this me, right? Because being into finance, heading the, being the CFO, heading the investor relations, corporate finance, doing merger and acquisitions, having, seen $200 million deals, right? Single-handedly doing this and packing a shoe on a, when people enjoy, right? So I was packing a shoe, right? I was traveling into somewhere into the future also, seeing what this passion, right, and what this journey can, be, right, in the future, where it can take me, right. So this is how you think when you start something, right, and this is not only for a business, right. So when you come into the MBA, right, you pursue any post graduation, graduation, you go to a school. There is always a thought, that you give it to it, right. So मेरा future में ऐसा होगा, right. This will be my future, right. This is from where everything starts, right? So, but what the essence of this is that you have the capability of sort of traveling into the time, right? It may be mentally, not physically, but we all have that sort of a capability where we can travel in the time, maybe past, maybe in the future, right? So we can all somehow we can foresee what the future gonna be, right? So this is something special that we don't see or we don't observe from that way, but we have those abilities, right? And neuroscience, of course, has a explanation to it that how we see the future or how we, perceive different frames in mind for the future, right? But there is a science behind it also, right? I'll give you another example. So, have you been through something like you are very engrossed in your work, right? You are too busy in doing something, and suddenly a distant pull comes, right? And you get distracted, and when you raise up your eye, you see somebody staring at you, right? So, have you ever thought why does it happen and how it happens, right? A moment back, you were too engrossed in your work, you were very much into your work, and suddenly you raise your head, right? And you don't look left or right, you just directly look into the person who is staring at you, right? So, there is some connection, right? right? There is an extra dimension that you don't see or you don't see that way, right? But it happens with a lot of us. So there might be some studies around it, but the point here is I am talking about there is a world beyond what we see, right? So in this current technology or this technological era, right? So I am from that, batch. I am a 2011 pass out from. I've done my post graduation MBA, right? So at that point in time, there used to be a logical reasoning, right? We all know logical reasoning. That used to be done on the Excels, right? छोटे छोटे formulae बनाते थे, सब कुछ करता था, projection हमको करना है, right? So that used to be on the Excel. Then came a age of the artificial intelligence, right? So that artificial intelligence now has converted into generative AI and now further into agentic AI, right? I don't know what the future gonna be, right? But somewhere, some point in time, it feels like the myths or something that we have seen in the movies may become real someday, right? So things are evolving. People are trying to conceive more dimensions and more thinking towards our future, right? So, but when we do so, one thing remains in common. This is the three-dimensional spatial world that we are in, right? So, as the human, we feel ourselves very much complete, right? And we feel that this is done, this is it, right? The 3D world that we live in, we don't see for any extra dimension in our day-to-day life, right? We feel, see, this is the ground, this is the air, and this is my belongings or whatsoever, right? This makes me complete, right? We get too much into materialistic, right? That we don't think of this thing, right? So there is a small concept called the tesseract cube, right? In case you have heard about it. So what it does, it tries to combine the time dimension with the 3D dimension or the spatial dimension that we are currently into, right? So I'll just take you through this. So do these images remind you of something? You are all are Gen Z, right? So and anyone can please help me. What is this? Correct. And what the thing that they are, this Loki is right. It's a time stone, right? And actually, this is a tesseract cube, right? So what these people are trying to, the hero and the villain, the Loki, are trying to do in this movie is that hero is trying to, Avengers are trying to save the world, while this Loki, who is the villain in this, is trying to control the time dimension, right, and control the future, right? So what is the ultimate objective of knowing these extra dimensions, right? So there are many theories behind it, right? So one very famous theory. So some of you, if you are engineers or have that sort of a technical background, so string field theory is a very known theory, right? We all know action equal to reaction, this and that, Newton's law, this and that. So it is from the same era, right? So this tells that there are beyond three dimensions, there are multiple directions, right? And there are further studies and theories behind it. So there is a superstring theory which tells that in the universe there are 10 dimensions, right? M theory says there are 11 dimensions. Bosnic theory says there is a framework for 26 dimensions, right? So what I am suggesting here is when we talk about dimensions, right? So what are ultimate, why people try to understand these dimensions, right? Beyond these three dimensions are very much efficient for us and we are very much done with it, right? We don't need any additional this thing, right? But the scientists are working on it and the ultimate objective behind this is to control something, right? Which is not in your control right now, right? What is not in my control right now is my future. The very basic thing, right? So while understanding this dimension, we try to control something or maybe mold something which my future looks better, right? So today, if I understand all these concepts and harness these concepts, I may come to a point wherein I control my today, right, and can look for a better future, right? At least I can predict it, if not control. Same for from the same movie, the Infinity Wars, the Avengers, right? So there is a character called Doctor Strange, right? So he has the time stone with him, and while handing over the time stone to Thanos, right? So he sees 14 million possibility of a future outcome, right? And he sees there is only one possibility in which the Avengers can win, right? And in which he has to hand over that time stone to the Thanos, right? So what I am suggesting is, so from the point where you are today, right, you have to choose multiple options that give you a possibility of winning in the future, right? So and at every direction or maybe at any point in time, you have to keep choosing among what is good for you, right? So maybe implicitly, explicitly, we all keep doing this, right? So let's say you have to take a admission in college, right? For example, you see, yes, I have a future in this college, right? This is how my peers will be. I'll learn from my peers. This is how I'll go. I'll choose for marketing, finance, or maybe some business strategy or whatsoever stream that I want to, right? There is a future to it, right? So every origin, right? So every birth, At every single point you have to choose because it may lead to point A or point B at the end, right? So this is how it goes, right? So from this scientific angle, what we have, maybe it's understanding the multiple directions, right? The possibilities of multiple outcomes, right? So there comes a thing, or there is an art, right, which I see this as the entrepreneur, right? So many of you would be aspiring to become a good entrepreneur, right? Somewhere in the future, start your own business, hail, or maybe something doing something wonderful in your life, right? So any one of you who can explain from your perspective what an entrepreneur is, and any single, I don't want a definition, but how you yourself define an entrepreneur, please. Okay. Only innovation is the and coming up with the idea suffice, please. Right, please.
The person who has the ability to take the risk.
Absolutely. Right. So how do we see entrepreneurship, or maybe the characteristic of an entrepreneur who can take the risk, right? And who can be proven a good leader, a mentor, right? Who can work 17, 18 hours in a day, who can lead a team of maybe 100 people, 200 people, can come with new ideas, right? So this is how we see the entrepreneurs, right? And why do we say that they are the risk takers, right? I rather suggest that entrepreneurs are the most safe decision makers in this world, right? Entrepreneurs are somewhere like of your Lokis or maybe your Avengers who can see the future, right? So you and I can think from a perspective, this is right, this is wrong today, right? But entrepreneur don't see this bottle or maybe something that is kept here, right? He see the future. He has that extra capability of seeing those dimensions which a normal guy or maybe so somebody cannot see, right? He can traverse into the future. He can go through his own tesseract cube and can see what's gonna be there, the future there after 10 years or 20 years or 30 years down the line. And for that future he start preparing today, right? He can see that future, so he is not taking actually a risk, right? So we are taking a risk, right? So who is not an entrepreneur or does not follow the path of the entrepreneurship, actually he is taking the risk. He does not know what sort of possibilities will come tomorrow in his life, right? And what actions will they take and where it will lead to, right? But an entrepreneur knows that after 10 years this is the future and he is preparing for it. He is taking every single step for that future, right? So he's not taking a risk, right? It may happen during the course that he may leave some dimensions, right? So as we study string field theory, and so there are 10 dimensions, and in business this could be endless dimensions, right? He may think of one dimension, two dimension, three dimension. He may have missed one dimension or two dimension or some other dimensions, right? So he may forecast something but could not predict that there will be a financial crisis, there will be a global crisis, right? There will be a resource crisis, there could be some geopolitical events that can come in the future. And in this way, his startup can go up and down. But the point is, at what point in time he perceived his business, he was very right, for the future. You are management student and you would all have studied the SWOT analysis, right? I'll try to uh, you know uh, make you understand this thing, the thought of an entrepreneur, right? So how does it think, right? How does he think, right? So let me give you an example. So let's say you today start a startup, or you are perceiving to start a startup right now, right? So what you will do, right, as a part of the basic management concepts or the business strategy framework, फर्स्टली वी डू अ शॉर्ट एनालिसिस. यही हमको पढ़ाते हैं क्लास में कि सबसे पहले अगर इंडस्ट्री में घुसना है, स्टार्टअप करना है, तो अपना सबसे पहले शॉर्ट एनालिसिस कर लो, सी आपका स्ट्रेंथ, वीकनेस, अपॉर्चुनिटी, थ्रेट्स क्या है, राइट? So let's say my current strength for starting any startup could be know-how, right? So why you do a startup, right? How do you do it? So you know that I have some capability that I can do this, right? So that little know-how is your strength right now to start that startup, right? What is your weakness could be that you may not be able to compete in the market right now. You are so minuscule, so small, right? The opportunity in the market could be that the market size is so big and the market is evolving. So even if you are small, you can grow, right? So there is a good headroom for you all to grow, right? And the threat here could be that because you are so small, some bigger player in the market seeing you that you are really doing good can stop you from doing your work, right? Or they can acquire you, or there could be some sort of a hostile takeover, right? So these are some of the threats, right? But if we put the entrepreneurship or maybe a time dimension, right? So I am coming from that dimensions apart from these three dimensions that we see. So these are the two dimensions that is usually put by the entrepreneur. It is own his vision, and he does not see what is today, right? He see after 5 years, what gonna be after 5 years, right? So this strength, which was know-how, which you were thinking as a strength, actually vanishes after 5 years, right? So what you have done today will be copied by multiple people after 5 years, right? So actually your know-how is not your strength after 5 years, right? However, your weakness, which you are assuming that you are too small right now, you cannot compete in the market. But with this little know-how, until it gets copied into the market, you gain some size, right? You are able to compete in the market. The opportunity, which was a good market, right, a good headroom where you can grow, right, that becomes sort of a saturated after 5 years, right? We see a startup comes, right, and there is a flood of startups that comes in, and everybody acquires some part of the market, and that market consolidates after 5 years, or there is a little headroom for you to grow, right? So, so that opportunity is not there after 5 years, right? And the threat that you are seeing that somebody can stop you from doing business, or somebody can acquire you, actually flips. The equation flips, right? Now you gain a size that you can influence the market decisions, right? Or you can acquire somebody, your peer, which is smaller than you in your size, right? So now what has happened? So how an entrepreneur will see it? The equation after 5 years are entirely flipped. Your strength, which was know-how, has become your weakness because there is no core capability that would be having after 5 years. Everybody would have copied it. Your weakness today, which was you not competing in the market, you are very minuscule, you have gained some size in the market, and that becomes your strength, right? Similarly, for opportunity, which was a good market, growing market, there is a consolidation that becomes the threat, and the threat of being acquired converts into your opportunity that you can acquire now somebody, right? So a Loki or maybe the Avenger of the entrepreneurship, scenario does not see this, right? He see this, that I have to prepare for 5 years. I know that my know-how will be, dissolved after some time. So I have to prepare today that after 5 years I should build on a different know-how, right? Or I should gain that size that nobody can impact me, even if I don't have any know-how. The other example for this could be the Porter five force model, right? So you also would have studied this, right? So I am not teaching the concepts or I am not telling you the concept, but it's a different view that how entrepreneurs see it and that how you, the budding entrepreneurs, should see the market, right? There is no problem in this Porter five force model or a SWOT analysis, but there should be a way to see it, right? There you have to add few other dimensions to it to see that after 5 years what will happen. You cannot sit on today, right? So in the Porter five force model, it's a very good model and tells you about the competitive rivalry in the market right now. It tells about the potential in the industry, right? So competitive rivalry being one of them, buyer power, supplier power. There is a threat of new entrant. There is a threat of substitution, right? So here again, I'll give you an example. So let's say with maybe a $1 million or maybe seven and a half, 8 CR, you try to start something in the telecom industry, right? And when you start with that budget, $1 million, right? So everything starts working against you, right? There used to be a time when I don't know if you have seen or not, but in my time, a decade back, there used to be 11 mobile operators: Telenor, Uninor, Tata Indicom. There were so many in the market. The market was flooded, right? And when you start in that sort of a market with a very small budget, so you have intense competition with you, right? Purchase power, the purchaser, the supplier power, right? The buyer power. Now buyer has the power that they can shift between the 11 players, right? They will ask you, यार 200 रुपए का plan नहीं करो, इसको 150 रुपए का करो, otherwise I'll shift to some other player, right? So everything starts working against you. But now, when you add two other dimensions to it, one is of course the entrepreneur vision, and other is the money dimension, right? So instead of 1 million, if you have the capability and the resources to start your business with $1 billion, the only thing that the dimension that you have to add is the money dimension, right? And when you start with this $1 billion, you can now undercut the prices in the market. You can absorb the losses. You can build that infra which nobody has built, and eventually you can disrupt the market. And the classic example of this is Reliance Jio, right? After the entry of Reliance Jio, with that money dimension with them, right, they disrupted the entire market. And today we say there are only two players, major two players in the market who are into the mobile listing, right? So they didn't see this at that point in time. They put their entrepreneur vision, they put a money dimension to it, and they could see the future, right? So everything becomes sort of a nil, right? After 5 years or 10 years, and this is what they have proven. Now, the other thing that you have read, of course, this is the BCG matrix, right? So what happens in this? Cash cow, question marks, stars, right? So cash cow is something which is a good business going from the generations, might be starving for a growth in the market because there is a stagnation in the market, but they are earning good cash or earning good profits year after year, and the promoter or maybe the chairman or maybe the originator of that business thinks, ठीक है पैसा आ रहा है, let's keep running this business, right? But at the bank somewhere he might be starving for the additional growth, right? Everybody has a vision कि मेरा business grow करे, right? So now what happens? You all know that this free trade agreements are happening, right? With New Zealand, with Europe. This is how the things are doing. There was a LPG reform, right? Liberalization, privatization, globalization that happened in 1991. Absolutely right. And there was a absolutely new perspective in the Indian market, right? The thumbs up, which you know about the Coke case study, right? So before the Indian markets were blocked, Coke was having around 60% sort of a market share in the Indian market. When they were thrown out of the, I'll not say thrown out, but when this economy become closed, right, they could not do the business in India, right? At that point, a new brand came called Thumbs Up, right? So Thumbs Up started from a very, of course, the rags. It was a startup with very, uh, little resources or the minuscule resources, right? But when after a year or after a decade, when Coke came back to India, they saw that Thumbs Up was acquiring more than 80% market share, right? The Coke acquired Thumbs Up to destroy this brand and to so that they can get the shelf space from their Coke brand name, right? And today we know that they could not destroy after acquiring Thumbs Up themselves, right? Because Thumbs Up penetration was so strong, right? So what I'm suggesting here is when you put a globalization sort of a dimension to it, right? Your cash cow, which was actually starving for a market share, right, gets a global field to play around, right? Your stars, right, so which were having a good market share, evolving in a good market and throwing some sort of a cash also, may actually become question mark, right? So there could be few companies in India, if the economy is closed, that they are doing well, right? But when this globalization happen, right, these small players can become even more minuscule, and there could be more competitors from the globe who can come and actually stop this business, right? And can totally choke them from growing, right? So everything goes for a toss, and this entire equation flips, right? So this is how we have to see from entrepreneur perspective and putting multiple dimensions to a business. One could be time, money, globalization, right? These are three, four dimensions that we have seen. The other could be your time dimension also, right? So time dimension and might be your technology dimension also. It's an evolving era, correct? So what I suggest here that you can change or control anything. May it be the Avengers or may it so be any concept, right? But there has to be origin to it, right? After only taking birth, you can control your future, correct? Similarly, for an entrepreneur, the idea origin, right, as you said, so that origin of idea of thinking something is the starting point, right? So every single day or every single month or a week, you have to see multiple possibilities that my startup will go there. You have to recalibrate yourself so that there is less risk, there is a minimum risk, and there is a higher possibility for you to grow it successfully.
Talking about or the perspective as an entrepreneur. Suppose you have to leave your job and you have to start something of your own. So, regarding the innovation aspect, you would sit down and brainstorm regarding creating something absolutely new, or I'm asking your perspective,
Sure.
or you would brainstorm about already existing set of businesses, their supply chain distribution, all the technical aspects and everything because innovation usually comes at a huge monetary market. So,
Right.
what would be usually wise to think about starting something absolutely new or coexisting?
No, you're absolutely right. So, if I see from my own perspective, right? So, what type of business you are doing does not matter, correct? It's already into the market, right? So, as I said, Geo came in the point when there was the highest competition in the market, right? The compliances were very tight, right? And there are multiple things that we see, right? So, DMart, there was a Kishore Biani's Big Bazaar, right? So we have seen Big Bazaar at that spot, and we have seen Big Bazaar closing also. Correct. There are multiple players who have come after Big Bazaar doing the same business which they were doing. Correct. So what business you are doing does not matter to some extent, right? But what matters is how can you think and what steps do you take to make it successful, right? So this is what I am suggesting, that every single step you have to recalibrate your market. You have to do the SWOT, of course, right? You have to do the Porter 5 force model, but you have to see 5 years down the line how this thing's gonna be, changing, correct? What would be the scenario after 5 years? So after 5 years, would it be Blinkit? Correct. People will stop going to the hyper stores or maybe your bigger super stores or something, right? What's going to happen after 5 years? It's in today's day and time, we are seeing there is a downfall in the retail market, right? And why is that so? Right? There is a downfall in the super bazaars or so and so, right? Because there is a Blinkit, right? Now, if somebody today take a decision that I want to open another big bazaar, right? That will be a disaster, right? Or the strategy has to be that way that you can compete with Blinkit, correct? So you cannot close your eyes. This is what I am thinking. You have to think beyond the three dimensions. कि सुपर बाजार तो चलता है यार, वहाँ डिस्काउंट चलता है, सिर्फ डिस्काउंट नहीं चलता है वहाँ पे, राइट? कन्वीनियंस भी एक फैक्टर है. नाउ ब्लिंकिट और मे बी योर 10 मिनट डिलीवरी थिंग्स बीइंग देयर, सुपर स्टोर पे अगर आपको 20% डिस्काउंट पे मिलेगा, राइट, यू विल नॉट बाय इट. इवन यू इवन नो इट कि वहाँ 20% डिस्काउंट पे मिलता है. Because you have the Blinkit, you have just 10 minutes. There is an impulsiveness that all, of course, has come into us, or different business model has come into us, right?
Sir, if I have to branch out my question, I don't have a mobility problem. I have to do this situation, and I am seeing that the trend is towards e-commerce. So either I could three or four major players, I could coexist with them.
Right.
So since I don't have a monetary problem, either I could start my own Q-commerce business, or I could acquire some spaces in which they can have their facility. But since both are going to make money, I can put them on for rent. I can have money. So what is going to be the more consistent?
So see, leasing spaces to this 10-minute delivery apps, right? I'll not say that this is an entrepreneurship, right? It's a commercial model. It's a real estate sort of a model, right? Entrepreneurship is something which he suggested that, coming with the new ideas and helping the, the people, or maybe building something new in the future.
Providing convenience to customers and providing convenience to them.
So, but that is not a sort of, see, if you disrupt this model, right, for leasing spaces like co-work, WeWorks, right? So they have disrupted the model. If I am a startup, I don't want this entire floor for my office, right? 2 seats work for me, right? So they have disrupted this entire leasing model. They say, okay, there are 10 startups, I have 20 seats, I can give 2 to each. You pay me per seat, you don't pay me per floor, correct? So if you can bring sort of a disruption in your leasing to this 10-minute delivery app, right? So that can be an entrepreneurship. But just leasing and subleasing, I personally don't see this as an entrepreneurship, right? Making the margins in between, or the commission, or the arbitrage, right, is not sort of a entrepreneurship, right? But yes, to your earlier point, if you want to start, there is no monetary problem. Your money dimension is solved, right? You start something on the quick commerce which others are not doing, right? So you all may have used Milk Basket. I'm just telling from a personal experience, right? So Milk Basket is a Reliance venture, right? What they do, they have disrupted the market, right? And for your information, somebody of you would be knowing that Reliance is number 2 in the 10-minute in the q-commerce, right? We hear Blinkit, we hear this. Reliance has come and they have declared that we are number 2 in the quick commerce, right? How they do it? So Milk Basket, they have disrupted the model by what, saying that you order the entire day and I will deliver you without a ring in the morning at 7 a.m. right? And this is a fantastic model. You don't have to pay for the delivery charges. You don't have to pay for the handling charges because their distribution is sorted, right? They don't have to, runner don't have to run specifically for you taking his bike, right? This is why they charge you delivery charges and handling charging and so forth, right? But Milk Basket has a very, known sort of a distribution that they know that in this particular society, I have to get this truck done in the morning and he will distribute, right? So they save on the economics, right? And I'm also sorted that I need not everything in my life in 10 minutes, right? I want the convenience, which is being delivered by Milk Basket in the morning at my doorstep without any ringing the bell, right? So something, if you can think in this direction, that if disrupting, correct? So that will be an entrepreneurship, or they may take another sort of a magnitude in the business in the quick commerce, right? I hope I have sort of answered. right? So now coming to what should we do, and what are the prospectus that if you are the budding entrepreneur, what you should do, right? So anyone who can explain me what is a D2C? So what does direct to customer mean? Why it is called
No middlemen.
absolutely. So D2C means straight business, right? I am the manufacturer or I am the brand holder and I sell directly to my customer, right? So what are the obvious things for the why are this D2C market is evolving? Why it's currently contributing more than 30% of the overall sales, maybe in the fashion or maybe in the medical, right? So what could be the things for it? Why it is coming so high in the market right now? Anyone?
From the middlemen there, and it also the margins are higher for the company, and it will easy for the company to reach to the customers and build a loyal database or the requirements of the customer, because there is a direct reach to the customer, no middlemen support.
Right, but how does it impact you as a customer? So that it is a D2C brand, you would be doing all this thing. But why will you buy prefer a D2C brand over a maybe?
One of the reasons, like as a company is knowing about the customers are also able to reach directly to the provider, to the manufacturer. They are able to get tell their demands, what will satisfy them actually, whether they are finding the value for what they are buying in the product that they are buying from the company. So it's easy for the customer as a customer. It's easy.
Okay. So let's say we have heard of multiple wellness brand, right? So one could be like your SK Vitals, or there is one more brand, right? So Kapiva, I think, right? So why will you buy from maybe your these startups and not from your Himalayan or Dr. Vedya or maybe Dabur? Cost is not low. You compare the prices.
So, while
And if she's saying that margins are higher, which is a reality of D2C, it means margins कहाँ से आएगा? Because they will earn from you, right? So it is not cheap. Please, you are saying something.
when we go to buy something product at a local kirana store, they are the point of sale for us. And if the brand itself becomes point of sale, the customer relationship.
But why will you buy? My basic question here is why will you buy from a startup which has no precedence in the time, right? You know that it's a startup. Product क्या है, research हुआ है, नहीं हुआ है. Dabur is a company which is there for multi decades,
But it depends upon how their marketing.
right? To some extent, you are right.
Because something related to innovation as well.
So sorry, one by one, please.
Something related to innovation as well. Just because it's just startup.
बट एक मल्टीविटामिन है अगर राइट उसमें आपको पता है विटामिन ए डी है जेड तक सारा विटामिन है उसमें राइट एंड एवरीबडी इज डूइंग द सेम थिंग राइट देयर मे बी अ केस दैट दे आर मेकिंग इन द सेम फैक्ट्री आल्सो इफ यू रीड एट द बैक लेबल they might be making in the same factory.
So,
Then
correct me if I'm wrong, but I guess it would mostly depend, because it's a very generalized space. It would mostly depend on how the company is perceiving themselves and how they are representing themselves to the customer.
Absolutely.
Because it's not just the customer. Obviously, the customer needs to be attractive first. So that would completely depend on
Right.
the company, how they are placing them and positioning them.
right. Perfect. So to some extent, this is the very apt on the on answering this, right? So what this D2C brand do, right? So one thing is very obvious for any D2C brand where they're coming in the market. It's very easy to start. Even if you have 10,000 rupees in your pocket, you can get a website done from Wix, or there are multi platforms today where you can start a free website, right? You can buy a domain for 500 rupees or even 100 rupees sometimes, right? Demand is growing. Somewhere that if I want to sell 2 units or maybe 10 units in a day, the demand is that good that मैं 10 मिनट तो बेच ही दूंगा यार दिन में, right? So there is a growth at least for some year. Gross margins are of course higher because there is no parting in between, there is no distributor retailer, so right, and you have the control over the price, right? So if I want to sell, let's say, for 699 something, and next day I see that there is no so much traction around it, so मैं उसको 599 भी कर सकता हूँ. It's not that I have floated this into the retail and next day I cannot change the delivery or I have to get my complete the material back. What is not so obvious about this, which I was actually asking, right? So these D2C brand actually sell their story, right? They sell their brand. correct? They try to somewhere imitate you, your cult, right? Your culture, or maybe your thinking with their brand, right? And they are not mass targeting, right? So they are targeting a very specific audience in the market, right? I know that I'm a fitness freak, right? Or if somebody is a clothes freak, right? So there are people who like multicolor, clothes, right? So they say that this specific shirt, T-shirt, or so, right, represents maybe a sun or maybe a moon or maybe a universe, correct? And this guy who is actually dreaming about going to NASA or something, right? He sees there are multi, planets that they have made on the T-shirt, correct? So he somewhere relates to that brand, to that story, and why he buys this, correct? We have seen that the T-shirts with a marble print for kids sell more than any other T-shirt, right? कंफर्ट भी अगर नहीं होगा, प्राइस भी ज्यादा होगा, करेक्ट, बट स्टिल किड्स यूजली बाय जिसमें वो मार्वल का एक लोगो लगा हुआ है, राइट? व्हाई इज दैट सो? बिकॉज दे लाइक मार्वल, राइट? सो ब्रांड्स आर एक्चुअली सेलिंग देयर स्टोरी, राइट? इट्स नॉट दैट दे आर सेलिंग एनी सॉर्ट ऑफ अ सोल्यूशन, और सोल्यूशन होगा, देखो, राइट? सोल्यूशन विल बी देयर, but the point is what people are buying, why are they are shifting from the conventional brands to the D2C brand, right? So here the point is, so if you are starting anything, right, you have to firstly see the dimension, right, in which your audience are lying, correct? So maybe for your example, right, you're starting any quick commerce or anything, right? Milk basket is not selling everything, correct? Blinkit might also be selling a very curated collection, right? Or even if you go to the marketplace like of your Nykaa, Myntra, or if Flipkart, Amazon, right? Every marketplace or everything that we see in the this generation of entrepreneurship, right? They have their own cult, right? Flipkart is selling primarily to tier 3, tier 4. वो बोलता है ये मेरा मार्केट है, मैं यही बेचूंगा. Amazon बोलता है tier 1 is my market. Myntra बोलता है fashion is my market. Nykaa बोलता है fashion में भी beauty fashion for female is my market, right? And why these are not competing so much with each other is because they have a defined cult, right? Some whomsoever comes in their territory, they either buy this or get acquired by themselves, right? So I don't know if you have heard. So there was a tiny owl or something like of this before this Zomato or this Swiggy came in, correct? There were multiple brands, smaller brands, which were fulfilling a specific region for their food delivery. When these people came in with their money dimension with them, they acquired all these people, right? Blinkit before Blinkit was Grofers, right? Grofers was not a 10-minute delivery app, correct? It was a grocery delivery app, correct? They acquired this, of course, the founder is still there and running this as a Blinkit. But the point here is that you have to have a defined cult, that this is my cult and I have to do everything as per my audience, correct? Whomsoever infringes my territory, either I have to get acquired, by business बेचो, पैसा बनाओ, कुछ और start करो, or if you have the money muscle, right, so you can acquire that business, correct? But you have to protect your territory in this. The other thing is, of course, when we sell our story, this packaging becomes very critical, right? So the old age brands or the conventional, if you see maybe for a footwear or maybe something, right, they come in a very conventional of a packaging, right? वो गंदा सा एक डब्बा होता है, उसके अंदर शूज है, अच्छे हो, क्वालिटी अच्छी होगी, बट शूज का जो बॉक्स है दैट इज वेरी shabby, because they didn't think that way. They don't have to transfer a message, they don't have to communicate in that way, that they are selling a story, right? But if you take any startup maybe in the footwear or something, you will see the packaging is very exciting, correct? If they are selling a sneaker, right, to a Gen Z who is into colors, right, who like color, so outer packaging will also be telling that message, right? That there are multi-color packaging and that they spend on the packaging, right? So packaging is something which is also becomes very critical, right? D2C gives you more agility, right? The first agility comes from because you are small right now. You can see more strategies, you can take actions, accordingly. And by actions and strategy, what I mean, so if you see there is a cult, correct? You cannot be correct at every step, right? So as we discussed, there is a possibility of outcomes. Today you see outcome that this could be the outcome. If I do this, if I launch this brand, I do this packaging, I target this cult. It may happen that it may not work, correct? सब startup नहीं चलते हैं, right? So you have to change the strategy at some point in time. यार ये मेरा cult नहीं है. I cannot there are not so much people in this Gen Z who are targeting NASA or who are into the space science, correct? बहुत छोटा सा है. फिर आपको लगता है यार देखो मैं तो स्केल नहीं कर पा रहा हूँ यहाँ पे, राइट? देन यू somewhere shift your strategy and you take the other possible outcome, correct? So there is a agility that you have, in a D2C. And the fourth very critical point, which he has already said, is the customer data, right? So what tells you to change your strategy is of course the customer data, right? And this can come in multiple ways, right? So when you sell a brand, you see that I pitched to 100 people, right? So, or maybe there is a 1,000 impressions that will come on my website, but there is only one sale I can do, right? Vis-a-vis, when you change your strategy, you see now again there are 1,000 impressions, but I am able to sell 10, correct? You do again some changes, you speak to the customer, then you see you have done some improvisation to your product or to your marketing strategy, right? Instead of 10, now you are selling 20, correct? So this customer data becomes very critical for any D2C. Apart from this, your story, your branding, your packaging. So what actually slips when you start so as I said, so every D2C brand or maybe any new startup does not, there is hardly a percentage which gets successful or see the day of the light after 5 years or 10 years, right? So recently I was reading in this Economic Times a few days before. So this year 11,000 startups closed, right? हमें 11,000 स्टार्टअप हम सोच भी नहीं सकते हैं कौन होंगे क्या होंगे, राइट? बट 11,000 तो बंद हो गए. सो हुए कितने होंगे स्टार्टअप, करेक्ट? So there is something absolutely which slips, correct? And what could be that? The first is of course my customer acquisition. Customer acquisition is something very it's a dual-edged sword, right? You pay something, you show an ad on the Instagram or maybe your Facebook or maybe your Snapchat whatsoever, right? So to acquire a customer, you cannot buy a customer even if he's not daring to buy you or if he's not specifically looking for this thing, right? You have to hit the customer maybe 4 times, 3 times, 10 times, right? You have to educate the customer, देखो this is my solution, this is what I am selling, right? This is why this is good over for you, this is why this is good for the conventional brands, right? You have to hit the customer multiple times. So customer acquisitions is very very critical in this D2C, right? Because you are new, nobody knows you, correct? So this is somewhere which slips, and targeting the right customer, acquiring the right customer is also very important, right? So let's say you are selling, maybe again we are coming to the same example of a multivitamin or maybe a wellness brand, correct? You are targeting somebody who is maybe in his 17 or 18 years of age, right? Usually these people are keeping fit, right? 20 साल 25 साल तक 30 साल तक हमको विटामिन की जरूरत नहीं पड़ती, करेक्ट? बट इफ यू आर टारगेटिंग दीज पीपल, राइट, समवेयर यू शुड नो कि मेरा रिटेंशन भी कम होगा और मेरा कन्वर्जन भी कम होगा, राइट? बट इफ यू चेंज योर स्ट्रेटेजी, यू स्टार्ट हिटिंग द पीपल हु आर greater than 60 years or maybe 65 years, where a multivitamin becomes a daily essential, correct? Your retention will be higher, your conversion cost will be very less, correct? And your repeat will be higher, correct? So this customer acquisition, as I say, so it's very important that you have to think which step are you taking for your ultimate objective outcome, right? Third thing is on the P&L, right? So when we start something, we think that we have, let's say, 4 lakh rupees in my pocket or 10 lakh rupees, or किसी भी वजह से we start our business, right? But where we miss, we throw ourselves into creating the brand every time, right? कस्टमर ने बोला मैं ये ठीक कर दूं, कस्टमर ने बोला मैं ठीक कर दूं, कस्टमर ने बोला यार कि 4 दिन डिलीवरी बहुत ज्यादा है, मुझे 2 दिन की डिलीवरी करनी है. डोंट डिलीवर इट बाय अ रेल और समथिंग, get it delivered by air, right? But everything comes with a cost. Every product improvisation, every packaging, right? For a normal shoe of outer box, right, for any conventional brand may cost you around 15 to 16 rupees, right? But when you take any startup, that 15, 16 rupees box, when you try to put some colors into it or some imagination into it, can become 60, 70 rupees 80 box, right? And this is what I have seen at Lustig also, right? So there is a cost to it, right? Though you have acquired the customer, you are convincing some part of the customer, but there is a cost to it, right? So people get slipped on the P&L, right? You all understand P&L, profit and loss, right? So this is very critical that you have to monitor your P&L every single day, right? You have to listen to your customer, you have to build the brand, but P&L has to be seen, right? I'll give you an example on P&L that how it should be seen, right? So the fourth very critical point is the distribution, right? So what happens in anybody who can help me with what could be a flaw in the distribution or why distribution is important in a D2C brand or any other brand, which is.
So, I would like to highlight one example of distribution could be, like you said, Coca-Cola. So they basically came up with that fight today for Coca-Cola, but the distribution was the issue because it was not reachable to the people. So that could be an example of distribution because they promoted it widely, but the availability and distribution was not so strong that it was to the customer.
Absolutely. So most of you would have, I think, used Patanjali products,
Yes, yes.
right? So this happened actually with Patanjali once. So they marketed the product earlier, they launched in the market earlier, while they could not get too much thorough in the distribution, right? The penetration was not that deep, and there came a point when customer had to go to the distributor of the Patanjali because the product was so famous at that point in time, right? They were not getting this at the local kirana shop or something. तो लोग distribution जो ये partners होते थे इनके distribution houses के बाहर लाइन लगा के खड़े होते थे कि यार मेरे को ये दे दो मेरे को ये दे दो मेरे को ये दे दो, right? So though this sold good, but we didn't know the potential, right? वो 5,000 की sale could have been actually 10,000 rupee sale.
So why the company might have saved some of the cost as well.
So no, you are fine. But here the point is reaching to the customer is more important rather than saving the cost at some point in time, right? If I know that in Assam my customer sits, right, so at Lustage a substantial sale for us comes from the boots, right, and the customer for boots are not you and I usually, right? So they are the people who are in the hilly region or maybe the colder states of India, right? So when we talk about those, maybe Assam, Guwahati, or maybe J&K, right? Distribution becomes very critical there, correct? If I see कि distribution मेरे को पैसा लगेगा and I have to save on the distribution cost, I will not be able to get those sale, right? एक पूरा company का vertically खत्म हो जाएगा, correct? So somehow I have to make this distribution cheaper and more available to the people so that even who is sitting in the tier 3 of Assam who wants my shoes should be able to buy it, right? And the best thing here is that people know where they are living, right? They know that they are living in a hilly region or maybe a tier 4 city. So they know that I have to wait for 4 days or 5 days. But the point is, in 4 days or 5 days, up to his expectation, you have to reach there, correct? So distribution is very important. And the other part with the distribution is the blocking your inventory, right? So let's say you are a startup, you have produced as a white label 100 units of some article, right? And you want to sell this entire India. So of these 100 articles, you say that I want to have 10 warehouses in 10 different cities. So you have to block 10 quantity each at each of these warehouses. Now what happens? So let's say in Bangalore you have a warehouse, and let's say in a day you are able to sell these 10 units, correct? Now you at the back have 90 units at your back, right? But in Bangalore you will not be able to sell because you distributed only 10 units in Bangalore, correct? And for providing these 10 units, right, you have the backup of you have to get produce 100 units. 100 में पैसा लगाया बेचे 10, correct? So distribution is also again very critical when it comes with our data analytics, correct? So distribution does not go alone, it has to come with the data analytics also, right? And this is the reason that you study SPSS and many multiple regression analysis in your management course, which tells you कि data को कैसे देखना है, data को कैसे समझना है, right? This is the thing which actually supports distribution. You should know that my capability of selling in Bangalore is 30 units in a day, so I'll sell my 30, and in Assam I'll sell only 5. Please.
You mentioned about each product's people often see that for startups, the distributors are not able to keep their product. So how do you overcome that? Because it's not distribution.
So see what happens. We are discussing here is sort of a D2C, right? So for any startup does not go to the usually to the distributor to put their products, right? I'm saying for any startup, right? I am specifically for a D2C, right? The basic concept for a D2C, that is no distributor in between. You are selling it directly to the customer. You have the control over your product, your distribution, everything, correct? But still, if you reach to a level, correct, where you want a distributor, right? So usually happens that after crossing 100 CR of top line, right? So this is a golden top line usually seen in the D2C, and this is usually said if you have crossed this 100 CR top line, you are stable and you have a very bright future. 100 से नीचे सब कुछ vulnerability है. When you cross this 100 CR का top line, there might be a case you want to go into a distribution ship or maybe retailer or so and so forth, right? Now for any distributor to keep you, they want an assurance that you will be able to sell this, correct? And what happens, but why there is a difference between distributor and a marketplace, that marketplace at the back has the customer data and they know the analytics for the entire nation, correct? They know that Bangalore, if there are 30 units being sold in Bangalore, what is my potential for the entire of the India? Is 30 less or is 30 more? करेक्ट कि 30 मेरा बिकेगा नहीं बिकेगा और पूरे इंडिया में 100 बिकता है तो बैंगलोर इज माय 30%, राइट? फॉर अ लोकल डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर टू टेक दिस कॉल व्हाइल नॉट डूइंग द एंटायर पीस ऑफ डेटा, is a very tough call, right? Either you have to make the margins very high, right? Because this is an inventory block or there is a space block to it, and his capital is also somewhere blocked with you, right? So या तो margin high करना पड़ेगा या और either I have to give a assurity that this product will sell, right? So I'll give you an example of so I used to work for Havels India also, right? So they have of course a channel, डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर है, डीलर है, फिर एक रिटेलर है नीचे, रिटेलर के नीचे भी छोटे रिटेलर है, राइट? So every single salesman at maybe at Havels or something, they make sure that the material that they are giving to a distributor gets sold. The inventory of distributor is not blocked, right? So they make excellent relationship with the dealer who is being served by the distributor, and ultimate, the electrical shop at the ground. So they go to electrical shops also, make very good relation, and make sure that Havels is getting sold, right? So this distributor, where actually the thing was built, it's flowing in a stream, and this is the reason that Havels is known to be having a very good distribution channel in India, right? And it's flowing well, correct? Had there been a case that they are just selling to a distributor and distributor has to take the responsibility to getting this to the last retailer, right? The brand would have not become successful, right? So if you are a new brand, you have to work on your food, right? To make sure that distributor is selling everything. The other very critical thing is the scalability, right? So as I said earlier, if you see that I can make 10 units in a day and can sell 10 units also in a day, right? So there is no challenge still here. But the actual challenge becomes when you want to scale this business, right? From 10, when you want to make it 10 lakh units in a day, right? Then this market forces or my 5 force model, everything comes into place, right? When you are minuscule, आपने 10 यूनिट बनाया, 10 यूनिट अपने आजू बाजू में कहीं बेच दिया, nobody gets to know about it. There is no competition as such. You can convince those 10 people to buy your product, right? But when you scale, there is a different channel. There is a different, challenge that you see in the market, right? Now people start comparing you. It does not sell on the relation. It sells on your story, right? It sells on your merits, or maybe the strategy that you are following, or maybe one thing which is very common is the time, right? If you see that this is a good article available at 80 rupees, but getting delivered in 4 days, you will choose another article which is for 90 rupees, maybe a percentage less in the merit, but you'll choose that because, right, you see that this is getting me delivered in 1 day and other is in 4 days, correct? So those things come in a place when you grow on, when you start taking a scale, right? So scalability is a very big problem for D2C, and we have seen multiple brands. Even if you do a Google search also, there are many brands who die at a scale of 10 CR. 6 महीने में 10 crore का ARR आ गया, annual run rate, right? Only in 6 months. But they struggle to cross this 10 AR or take this to 40 CR or 50 CR or maybe 100 CR, and they take ages to cross this. And meanwhile, when they are doing this, they eventually die. Now, just to give you a numbers perspective, so what actually matters? So I was giving you an example of PNL, right? What usually slips, right? So there are multiple things or multiple dimensions in our D2C, right? Which we have to control while starting any startup, right? So I'll give you an example. You all can please focus only on the scenario one for now, right? So let's say we have 100 units. We are talking about a monthly. We can consider as a monthly PNL, right? So let's say we have 100 units and we have decided a price of 200 rupees, right? So my gross revenue becomes 20,000 rupees, right? These are the terms that are usually used in the D2C, so I have used those terms only, right? I'll explain you everything. So when you sell something online, right, there is a possibility of coming it back, and there could be two reasons to it. One, your delivery partner could not deliver it, right? Your customer is not available at home or something. We call it RTO, return to origin, correct? There could be other possibility of return that your customer don't like it, correct? And for any D2C brand or maybe fashion brand or something, where does not come a hindrance of that you cannot return, right? Once you have used it, let's say for a healthcare brand, once you have opened that bottle, right? So usually people don't take the return because you have opened it, correct? Or maybe for a perishable item, maybe like a surf or something, when you open the packet, or maybe doodh, dahi, whatsoever, you cannot return it because you have opened it, right? You may not like it, but you cannot return it now, right? But for a brand which is not perishable, right, people can return it, right? So usually the return percentage that are seen any new D2C brands are from a magnitude of 30 to 40%. This is a reality, right? You sell 100 units, 40% will come back to you. Let's say there's a 40% return, so these articles would have come to you, right? So your net revenue, you were seeing 20,000 rupees, but actually this is 12,000 rupees, correct? Now there is a CAC, customer acquisition cost, right? You are a new brand, you have to lure your customers, you have to tell them your brand story, so and so forth, right, to get your product sold, right? So let's say per article, my customer acquisition cost for per ad, let's say is 100 rupees, right? So you have spent 10,000 rupees, right, to acquire your 100 units, right? बेचा तो मैंने 100, मेरे को मेहनत करनी पड़ी to sell 100. Eventually because art, that's a different thing, right? But you are spending to get your 100 units sold, right? Now your ad spend is 10,000 rupees. Now there is a COGS. You must be knowing cost of goods sold, right? So this is my cost of the product, right? On a very simple thing, to make this glass, my factory cost or my ex factory cost, let's say 10 rupees. So this become my cost. Irrespective, I sell for 20 rupees, 30 rupees. इसको बनाने की cost मेरी 10 रुपए आती है. Correct. So this is my cost. Let's say it's 100 rupees per unit, right? Now my cost is to sell 60 units, right? 40 तो मेरे पास वापस आ गया. तो मेरे को 100 को जब when we multiply with 60, this becomes my 6,000 rupees. That's my cost, right? Now this is 50% cost margin, right? We have done everything great, right? But still we are at loss, right? So usually brand miss this, right? So this is very critical of P&L, right? Let's come to a scenario 2. Now I say that because I'm at the loss, चलो थोड़ा rate बढ़ा के देखते हैं यार अपना, right? Now I increase my rate from 200 rupees to 300 rupees. When you increase the rate from 200 to 300 rupees, there is a possibility that your number of orders will drop. Right. So when you buy, maybe headphone from Flipkart for 200 rupees, उसका of course number of orders ज़्यादा होंगे, बल्कि आप जब 500 का 400 का खरीदो, उसकी audience ही अलग है. Correct. Now assume let's my number of order drops by 50%. Correct. मेरे को 50 order है, but मैंने price बढ़ा दिया अपना, right? Now my return percentage I have kept everything same, मेरा cost भी same है, right? Sorry, मेरा customer acquisition cost भी same है. But when I sell something for let's say 300 rupees, that product should have that caliber of selling for 300 rupees, right? You cannot sell a 10 rupees glass for 3,000 rupees, correct? So I have to increase my costs, correct? Now, so again this cost is at 50%, correct? Now I have reduced my loss, right? You will see there is an irony here that my number of order have reduced by 50%, right? But still I am able to reduce my loss, right? Why does it happen? This is because of my price per unit, right? So for any D2C brand, right, price per unit, or we call it the ASP, average selling price, or AOV, average order value, that becomes very critical, right? So people usually miss and they say कि यार मैं एक बहुत cheap product लेके आऊँगा market में and I'll sell this for pennies and I'll disrupt the market, correct? That's a wrong perception, right? It may be right in some of the cases, but what I see this, because you're controlling the prices or maybe your price point is very critical, correct? You should not come something with cheap, right? And if you see in the last maybe 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, back in the timeline, you will see that people are coming with the premium brands right now. कोई सस्ता नहीं launch कर रहा है, right? And you know the reason behind this? This is the reason. Now people have started, the entrepreneurs have become very sharp. They have started understanding the P&L, right? उनको पता है देखो अगर मैं price ज़्यादा रखूंगा तो मेरे को P&L में I'll be minimizing my losses somewhere, right? Now in the third scenario, let's say now what I do to get back to my 100 customers, I increase my CAC, right? Customer acquisition cost बढ़ गई मेरी. क्यों cost बढ़ेगी? क्योंकि अगर मैं किसी को ऐड 3 बार दिखा के कन्वर्ट करता हूँ 200 रुपए के आर्टिकल पे, उसी कस्टमर को मुझे ऐड हो सकता है 5 बार दिखानी पड़े टू कन्विंस हिम टू बाय दिस फॉर 300 रुपीज रादर देन 200 रुपीज, राइट? एंड दिस इज अ बेसिक थिंग इफ यू ऑफ कोर्स नो डिजिटल मार्केटिंग, राइट? जैसे मेरा प्राइस बढ़ता जाएगा मेरा CAC बढ़ता जाता है, राइट? Now what I have done in this scenario, I have just increased my CAC, correct? Everything remains same. What happens here is my loss magnifies. Why does it magnify? Because there is not a linear relationship that I had followed with my CAC and my number of units, correct? So I have to be very particular about my CAC. अच्छा अब इस CAC को नीचे कैसे लाएंगे, right? देखो ये तो हमको पता है अगर 50 से मुझे 100 करने हैं क्या मुझे बढ़ाना पड़ेगा. Now here comes the major play, which is brand selling, right? Now I am not selling any usual product. I am not selling this glass, correct? What I have done, I have put a story to it, right? If you, let's say, if you drink in this glass which is transparent, you get transparency, right? This glass is for transparent people, correct? And any story can come with anything, right? So this is how your brand story sells, right? If you put a brand story to it, you will be able to control your CAC, right? If there is no story behind it, you are selling this as a commodity, CAC भागेगा, story आ गई, brand आ गया, correct? You are building a cult कि मैं specific audience को ही target कर रहा हूँ, right? So that reduces your CAC, right? You are all with me right now, still here, right? Okay, let's come to the scenario 4. What we have done in this scenario 4, that we have we have made a brand and we have reduced our CAC, right? We are back to this. Now here again, I have kept my CAC same, but what I have done, I have reduced my costs, right? So cost control can happen in multiple ways. Either could be distribution, right, or maybe something making where you have the expertise, correct. You find the right vendors for you. You find the right manufacturer for you, and somewhere you are able to control your cost, right. It may be in terms of the people or whatsoever, right. So when you do this, there is no change in this. Still, you are paying 150 rupees for as a CAC, right. So, but you have somewhere shortened your margins, correct. Now come to scenario 5. What I have we are doing here is, let's say you are doing some sort of a business where you can control the return. It may be the wellness, it may be something, or may it be understanding your customer from a perspective. Let's say I'll give you an example for Louis Stage, right. So initially we had our returns which crossed even 40%. Then we deep dive into this thing, what is happening, why people are returning, right. I checked all the orders. I see that somebody ordered shoe size 9, and we delivered size 9 shoe. I wear size 9, and I see, yeah, this is a perfect fit. But why people are returning this? Then we call the customer. Somebody told this is tight. Somebody told this is loose, right? And same happened in the morning also with sir also, right? So this is the case, right? Now what we have to do, we have to see on the ground what is actually happening, right? We saw, right, when we researched on it, that people in South usually have a broader feet, right? This is by their DNA or by this thing, right? People in Haryana have a broader feet, right? People in maybe in the western UP or this particular belt have a usual normal feet. And when we go to the hilly region, these people in the size 9 only have a hump in their feet, correct? Because देखो चढ़ाई करते हैं, सब कुछ करते हैं, they go on the uphills, right? So there is a difference in the feet. Everybody is calling it a size 9, but सबका structure बिल्कुल ही अलग है पैर का, right? So we have to study this hard, and we have to make changes in our shoe sizes, so that if somebody is ordering size 9, we cannot make different sizes or maybe a different shoe for every different market, right? One product should fit all, correct. Otherwise through scalability, distribution, everything is a problem, right. So we made changes to our this thing. It took us approximately 7 to 8 months to change the entire uh, anatomy of the food science, understand the anatomy of food science, right. But we did it, right. And now today we are sitting at just 10 to 15% returns, right. So you have to improvise your product, you have to understand your customer. This is the thing, that why customer data is very critical for us, right. When we do this, your return comes to 10%, right, and everything keeping the same, you have again narrowed your losses, right. Please. See, there are some things which are not in your control, correct. Like, let's say of the delivery partner, correct. Blue Dart का जो last mile है, correct, or maybe any logistics company, the last mile guy does not deliver to the customer, or he is reaching at a point when he has already left for the office. वो पहुंचते ही 2 बजे है और वो 8 बजे सुबह लोग काम के लिए निकल गए हैं. He cannot deliver at any point in time. उसमें neither we can control, nobody can control, correct. So it's on the route, right. It's not even the problem for a logistics guy, right. उसके route में ही 2 बजे आता है, correct. So there are various factors which are not in your control. So this 10% or 15% is a basic norm. ये तो होगा ही होगा. They do, of course they do, right. They have their own ATS, right, own logistics arm, and they are very efficient in this, right, I must say. But what happens in case you don't want to take it? You have bought something from Amazon, right, and on the Amazon only you like, and you have ordered it, you have paid for it, right, or it's maybe a COD delivery, correct. And maybe after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, because this is the thing right now, आप एक चीज अगर ढूंढोगे तो आपके इंस्टामार्ट पे और सॉरी इंस्टाग्राम पे लोग आपके पीछे लग जाएंगे आपको अपनी ऐड दिखाने के लिए, बिकॉज यू बॉट दिस, प्लीज लाइक दिस, right. And somewhere some point in time you like something good at a cheaper price coming earlier, right. You order this also, and you at the back of mind say, यार वो जब आएगा ना मैं फोन नहीं उठाऊंगा उसका, right, या मैं डिलीवरी नहीं लूंगा या मैं उसको मना कर दूंगा, correct. So this is not in the brand's control, not in the logistics control, right. So there is a thing, इतना रिटर्न तो आएगा ही आएगा when you start any online brand. So see, CAG is a function of uh, whom you target, at what point in time you target, right, and what are you selling, correct. So if I say in current day and time, right, so there are many brands who are selling the fitness products, right. But if you have heard of Super U, or there are many brands who are understanding what is there in the market, right? So there is a, you know, a very sort of a, you know, I'll say impulsive buying in the market, or maybe something has come into the market that everybody needs protein, right? हमने अब से 10 साल पहले या 5 साल पहले प्रोटीन का नाम ही सुना था, right? प्रोटीन सिर्फ उनको पता था जो जिम जाते थे. Now this protein has become a wellness diet, right? So even our mom, dad, or maybe in family say यार that you have to take adequate protein. लंबा होना है ये वो. हम पहले सुनते थे कॉम्प्लान पीना है यार, हॉर्लिक्स पीना है. क्यों पीना है नहीं पता. उसमें प्रोटीन होता है, that we know today, correct? So this protein bars etc. ये 5 साल पहले 2 साल पहले कहाँ थे, correct? So what are you selling, correct? That's a part of the cap. To whom you are targeting? As I said, for a multivitamin, if you are targeting a 18-year-old kid, correct, vis-a-vis a 65-year-old guy, right? So there is a difference, right? So again, as I said, so you have to see where you're targeting. But yes, it has to be linear. It does not follow a linear path. सेल डबल करने के लिए आप एड स्पेंड डबल कर दोगे, ऐसा नहीं होगा, करेक्ट? आपको एड स्पेंड डबल करोगे तो सेल 2x नहीं होगी, 1.8x होगी. अगेन यू एड इंक्रीज योर एड स्पेंड, ये 1.8 का 3.6 नहीं होगा, दिस विल बी 3.4, 3.2, करेक्ट? इट डज नॉट फॉलो अ लीनियर पाथ, करेक्ट? सो डज दिस आंसर योर क्वेश्चन? Okay. Now we come to it, right? So how to drive a perfect PNL, right? So there are what we have discussed: my average selling price, my COGS, my CAC, and my return percentages. These 4 parameters, 4 dimensions I have to control to get my venture profitable, right? Now here what we have done, we have made the number of units. 100 का 100 चाहिए मेरे को. Return percentage, by doing all these things that I have given you the example, reduce to 10%, right? मैंने अपना COC 150 ही रखा है because it will be unfair if I say कि भाई मैं 100 में 100 ले आऊंगा, right? But I am here considering that you have all played a sort of a brand play, right? Now my COGS, somewhere I have done sort of an optimization, and ultimately I get to a perfect PNL, which is my positive PNL, right? So while making any venture, you are going for any venture business बना रहे हो, सब कुछ है, right? So keep a control over these parameters. ये parameters, these are slow poison, which will not get to understand in the initial 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, right? And when you get understanding of this, you are too deep into a business that you want to put more money rather than closing it. And this is where all this, things happen, correct? कि वो लॉस में चला गया, ये हो गया, 10 साल की कमाई थी मेरी, और I lost in this venture, and again I'm back to my my job or something, correct? So this has to be, parameters have to be taken care of, right? So now what I say, that future is actually uncharted, right?
Yeah.
And why it so, there are multiple examples to it. So launching a 10-minute delivery app, we are speaking about it. Back in past, when there was no market for it, rather people were against it कि 10 मिनट में delivery हो कैसे सकती है, and why are you torturing the delivery guys? Because I am impulsive, there was so much of backlash on the internet कि यार वो 10 मिनट में ऐसा क्या है that I want in 10 minutes. अभी तक मेरी लाइफ चली रही थी ना यार. So why do I want in 10 minutes, right? So people were against it, right? It may create a chaos on the roads, it may give you mental harassment. It's a mental harassment of a delivery boy. But now everybody is using this delivery app, right? So the other thing is like maybe the cabs, right? So now cabs come to your doorstep, they wait for you. While the norm was to hail these cabs from the roadside, and you waiting for these cabs or of the auto, right? Now they come to your doorstep and they wait for you, right? You all must have heard about planning a city on the moon, right? So it's a new plan that has come to our thing, right? So this all may sound like a pure fantasy, right? But this is what? This is an act of a dimensional thinking, right? These people can think 20 years, 30 years down the line, right? They are not living today कि 10 मिनट में सब मना कर रहे हैं छोड़ दो, right? और moon पे कौन जाएगा यार? Well, what I'll do on the moon, but we never know after 20 years or 30 years or 50 years what will happen. Might be we are having our next station on the moon, right? So, but this is a dimensional thinking, right? So this is an entrepreneur who is not actually taking risks, he is actually planning for the future. It's a bold step, right? It's multi-dimensional thinking, right? From where he, from his own tesseract cube, can travel in the time and can see यार देखो 20 साल बाद ये होने वाला लाइफ में, right? So this is the entrepreneur from my side, and this is what I call as a tesseract, right? And there is a science behind entrepreneurship, and I suggest that entrepreneurs are not risk takers; they are the good planners. Right? Thank you so much.